All right. So Natasha and Amber, can you just acknowledge that you're okay with being recorded?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, croeso Natasha, croeso Amber. Um, I wanted to invite Amber and Natasha here today to talk to you guys about the placement year, and I'll do a little bit of an intro first. But then, what I would really like is that all the issues and all the things that you think I'm not really sure about, I don't really know, to ask them. I can tell you from a USW perspective how it works assessment wise and all that kind of stuff. But these guys have just gone through it, and they've gone through some pretty crazy adventures in the year out, which I'm sure they'll tell you about. Um, but so two things are happening next year for you guys who are currently in first year. So again, I would always recommend that every student be on the fourth year programs. I'm sure these guys would say as well. It makes a huge difference going out and coming back. But next year we are starting a 70-hour work experience module. So whereas Natasha and Amber did a module about branding, you guys will do a module called fashion industry preparation, which will have some branding stuff in it, but mostly be about getting you ready to go on the sandwich year.
I'm not jealous at all.
Amber, you're very welcome to come back.
Oh, no, I'm moving on. I'm ready.
All right. So I might start. Is either of you two want to go first? Have you got any? Great. Okay, Amber, seeing as you're the most recent speaker, do you want to go first and tell these guys who you are? Um,
Yeah.
Maybe your thoughts on the fourth year program, how you went about getting the placement, and what happened.
Okay, great. So, as you already know, I'm Amber, one of the placement students. I went to India actually for my placement. So, one of the people that didn't just stay in the UK. So in the branding sessions that Steve was just talking about, we had a talk from a previous USW student that had worked with a company called Visible Clothing, who were based in India, and they sort of had everything that ticked my list. I wanted to go to a company that I felt matched my morals and my ethics and what I wanted to do in the industry. So not a fast fashion brand, not a brand that treated other humans like garbage, which unfortunately most of them do, which Natasha's got some stories about that. and so I got in contact with Visible Clothing, and they accepted me for 2 months, which obviously didn't fill the requirements of the 6 months. So they put me in contact with another Indian-based company called Mahira Shaw, which, due to the pandemic and various reasons, I actually ended up spending my whole placement time with Mahira Shaw, who are an artisanal hand block company, which they're very focused on human-centered design and fair trade and just treating people with basic decent kindness, essentially, as well as providing beautiful clothes for everyone. And going there, I didn't really know anything about hand block printing, and I was sort of in the mindset of, oh, I don't really care about print design. I'm more focused on silhouettes. But that quickly changed. I absolutely fell in love with block printing, and even though I was sort of aware already that the industry was not great and didn't treat people great, the stories I heard from people there about their previous jobs, or from the owner herself about how companies typically operated in India, it was honestly shocking to hear the actual reality of it. But also it was crazy how easily Mahira Shaw did operate to fair trade standards. And oh, cute cat, mine's on the floor eating chicken I dropped.
He's a very naughty cat.
My cat's a girl, if that's who you're referring to.
No, my cat, who just
okay.
jumping all over the keyboard.
I don't think there's anything as a good cat. They always get in the way.
Very true.
Yeah, so as I was saying, it was also surprising how easily Mahira Shaw actually did meet what I considered an ethical standard. Like, it wasn't like they had to put many extra steps in place to be a decent company. It was as simple as they got paid fairly, they got paid on time, and the men and women were treated equally, and everyone had an opportunity to progress within the company. And one key thing that really showed me that the company was how they were portraying themselves, a good company all year round, was the fact that when the owner came to visit, no one really changed their attitudes. I mean, obviously they didn't joke around as much in front of the boss and stuff like that, but it wasn't suddenly a completely different work ethic. They didn't completely change how they were acting, and that spoke volumes to me. I felt like that was a point where I knew that this company was doing as it was saying, and I really felt at home there. And I did become a part of the little family, and I loved everyone there, and unfortunately I didn't get to say goodbye to them properly. But as well as experience the industry, I got to experience another culture because I went to India, and that in itself is an experience I wouldn't trade for the world. Even if I did get stuck in the middle of a pandemic, thousands of miles away from home, and had to rush back, it was still worth it. And honestly, I don't think I'd be as good a final year student now if I hadn't gone on my placement. It not only did it give me the confidence, but it really helped me understand where I wanted to go in the industry. Like, I knew before I wanted to be sustainable and ethical and all these things, but going in the industry, it was like, right, this is how I can do that. And I've actually decided I want to work with artisans now, because no amount of words will ever be able to describe how it is to watch those people work. And it was completely fascinating watching them carving blocks and using the blocks and all these things. And like I said, I just fell in love with it. And I definitely would not be as confident now doing my final collection, that I had a clear vision. And it just makes a world of difference, because I feel now I have some knowledge and some realistic expectation of what the industry will be like. Obviously, I don't know everything. I had 6 months in the industry, but it was so different to what I expected before that experience, that I think I would have been terrified if I was in this position now, about to go out in the wide world, and I hadn't had any experience whatsoever. So I would 100% recommend it. The placement year was easily the best year of this course for me. I've loved everything else, but but going out into the real world and getting a taste of what I will actually be doing as a designer was amazing. And I was lucky enough to find a company that was happy to let me be involved in everything, from design to quality control, tech packs, and also a very open team that would talk to me about everything I was interested in, which helped a lot. And maybe not everyone would be that lucky, but
how did you find that? How did you find the place, Amber? Like, you went from Visible to Mahira Shaw. How did you get that first one?
As I said before, I've forgotten her name, but Steph, that's it.
So these guys have just worked with Steph on a module.
Oh, okay.
On a live module. Yeah.
Steph is actually the student that put me in contact with Visible Clothing, and they were great, really lovely.
You just sent them an email.
Literally just emailed them like, hi, and I did name drop Steph, like I know Steph and everything, and sort of was just really honest with them about what I wanted from a placement, and that I felt they really aligned with where I saw myself, and showing that I was excited. When I had a phone interview with Mahira Shaw to talk about it, I got a lot of comments about how my excitement was really reassuring, and that she could tell that I was so excited about it, and that made her excited to take me on as an intern. And it just sort of reassured her that it would be worthwhile for me traveling halfway across the world, but also for her as someone that, obviously wants to gain something from having an intern. Because I think the mindset of thinking of it as a job as well helped me a lot. I had some interns that were like, oh, this is just a thing for uni, but in my mind I was going to work, I was working, and I had such amazing feedback from the people overseeing me. So it, at the end of the day, if you don't make the most of it, you're not going to get anything out of it. You do need to take charge, you need to ask questions, you need to be like, can I be involved in this? The worst they're going to do is say no, and you won't lose anything, but you don't gain anything if you don't ask.
Did the course set you up for that kind of attitude?
Yeah, I think it did, to a certain degree.
It's okay to say no.
No, I mean, I would say it's more my own anxiety got in the way, but if it weren't for the course and knowing that I could sew, knowing that I could produce a tech pack, knowing that I knew what a lay plan was, knew certain terminology, etc., if I didn't have that knowledge, then I definitely wouldn't have been confident enough to be like, hey, I want to work with you. Because I felt like with what the course had taught me, I had enough knowledge that I could be useful to them. You know, like they wouldn't have to hover over my shoulder and teach me everything. I could get on with a certain amount. And, you know, say you wouldn't apply for a job if you were completely useless at whatever they wanted you to do. And even though it might not seem like you know a lot, but not everyone can sew, not everyone knows what a tech drawing is, not everyone can put together a lay plan, and not everyone knows about fabrics and things like that. So you surprise yourself at how much you do actually know. And when we came back in the final year, actually, we put together a whole list of things that we actually do know, and we covered the whiteboard within minutes. Like, even though all of us were sat there like, oh, we don't really know that much.
Cobblers.
So yeah, sit down, make a list of everything you know that a non-fashion student wouldn't, and you'll be surprised. Even as simple as you know how to use Adobe software. Like, that's a huge setup.
Yeah, 90% of students, even at USW, don't know how to use that.
Exactly.
Thank you, Amber. Natasha, do you want to? So we've got Amber out in Asia having like the best year of her life, ending up being the only person in her guest house. Through to Natasha, who went to Europe. Natasha, do you want to give us a rundown of who you are, what you did, all those kind of fun things?
Yeah, so I'm Natasha. I'm sure you've all seen my face over the past week all over USW. It seems to have been everywhere. So I did 3 placements. I don't really know if I set out to do 3 placements. I definitely set out to do more than 1, but I ended up doing 3. So in September to December, I went to Amsterdam, and I got that placement because there was a photo of a Leon Leon dress, which was the company I worked for, Leon Leon, on the front of one of Joe's brief. I think it was Innovations 2 with the light up garments. And that garment was on display at the Nemo Museum in Amsterdam. So I just kind of did some research into who made that, and found a contact email, and I was like, okay, well, if I don't ask, you don't get. So I just kind of emailed and I said, oh, hi, here's my CV. I'm a fashion student. I'd love to come and work with you in Amsterdam. And I got an email back like, yeah, sure. And it was the strangest way to set up an internship I think I've ever had. I hadn't seen the guy. We hadn't Zoom called. We were just emailing, and he was like, yeah, start on this date. And I was like, okay, I'll just arrange everything to come to Amsterdam then. So yeah, I just went to Amsterdam. When I arrived in Amsterdam, the internship got pushed back a couple of days because he was having a birthday party or something. So I was basically assistant designer there. There wasn't really a proper job role. It's just Leon who like works at the company, and then he has interns, but the interns are like people who already have careers. There was one lady who worked in the government and just came in and did 1 day a week. One lady who worked in a bridal store and only came in 1 day a week. So they're not like the classic university age interns. But that was a really cool experience because you got to learn about other industries from those people as well. Yeah, and I got to do loads of things in Amsterdam. My boss was really cool. He took me to loads of gay bars. We were one canal away from the red light district. We were central Amsterdam, and like learning how to get around the city, avoiding the bikes, because they're scary at some points. And and just finding my way around. Like, I really did love Amsterdam. It did feel like a second home. I lived in like a student halls kind of place out there, which was about half an hour by metro to central Amsterdam. And that was really fun. I shared a kitchen with 27 people. But luckily we weren't all cooking at the same time. You kind of had clusters of when each kind of country group would go in. So ours was always like 6 p.m. And then I met up with some girls from like Leeds and Manchester, and they were there. So it was really nice because I wouldn't have got to meet those people either if I hadn't have stopped where I stayed. So that was fun. And then it got to Christmas and I came back. A ferry crossing from Amsterdam at Christmas is not fun. Wouldn't recommend. So then in January, I went to London and I did an internship at Susie Turner Couturier. Would not recommend if I'm being honest, but it was a good experience. It was basically just Susie, and she flew from LA to London constantly, and there was just like us 10 interns in her flat. She had like one room of the flat for her like bedroom, and then the rest of it was the studio. And I learned a lot from the people I was with. Like, there was a jewelry designer there. I think she studied at Central St. Martin's. There's quite a lot of Central St. Martin's London College of Fashion people that go there because it's London based. But yeah, that was fun. Lots of nerves, I would say, a lot of the time, because you just had to be aware of Susie's mood and how she was. But all the girls that were there were lovely. But I soon realised that if I didn't leave, I would start clashing heads with how Susie was running the place. So I managed to get an internship at Stiletto by QRI, who are based in London as well. And they are a fast fashion supply-based company. I think they've dramatically downsized since COVID. But when I was there, they were supplying Topshop, Dorothy Perkins, River Island, Primark in Ireland, which is Pennies, and then Primark UK, and then Debenhams, I think they did, and they also did a department store in Ireland, but I can't remember the name. But it was just outerwear, so it was all fast fashion, but it's just outerwear. And my main role there was to take photos of the samples that had just come in. I did a thing called trimming off, which I'd never heard about before I got there. And it's where you get given the fashion fabric and then you go off into the fashion closet, I guess, and pick the linings, the trims. So I got quite a bit of creative freedom. They were just like, go find me a button that's like 40 line, kind of match it to the coat so it looks okay. So you just got to like dig around in all the buttons, which was really fun. And I think that internship taught me a lot about the waste in fast fashion. Like, I walked away with 3 like massive boxes full of fabrics, and I'm saying like they were just throwing these fabrics out, and some of these fabrics have more than 3 meters on, and they were just throwing it out. So like, when I saw that, I was like, this is like the tiniest supply-based fast fashion company, and we're producing this much waste. And I was only there for like a month and a half before we closed for COVID. So you just think, on that scale, what is actually happening in the fashion industry, and the amount of waste that, like, those materials were brand new. There was nothing wrong with them at all. Like, I've still got all of them and I'm planning to make stuff out of them. So I think that really drove like my commitment to sustainability, which is where I'm headed now. But I would honestly say that like, do the placement year, because it is so worth it. Like, you get a break as well, because like, as we do fashion design, like, it's constant, and like we're always doing something, whereas when you actually do a job, like most of the time it is 9 till 5. Like I stopped a lot later sometimes. I used to work like 9 till 8:30, 9:30, because at that point COVID had started and they kind of wanted to clear us off the tube, so I had to get a lift in with my boss, who was like working all hours of the night to keep the company going, so I just got a lift with her whenever she finished. But yeah, it's definitely worth it. And I found Susie Turner through, I think it was through Fashion Worky, and just applied. But that interview was done by another intern, by the social media intern, which you didn't realise until you walked in. And I went to greet her and I was like, oh, hiya. And she was like, oh, I'm just an intern like you. And I was like, oh, but you hired me. And then I got selected by QRI through Indeed. I think I just looked on Indeed and I was just looking for any fashion internships in the area. And I just sent my CV off through Indeed and then went for an in-person interview. I did that whilst Susie was in LA and just told everyone to just wait until she came back and then I'd speak to her. So yeah, it's just like Amber says, like you get out what you put in. You know, I had some amazing experiences in Amsterdam. I spent 2 nights at the Krishna-Polski Hotel doing the Moët and Chandon 150th anniversary of their imperial champagne, and that was just overwhelming. Like the people you saw, the outfits you saw, you know, it was an incredible 2 nights. And it, like, I got to make all of those garments. All my stitching is in at least half of them, like makes up half of them. So you really do learn a lot through the internships. And like, I mean, I had a practice interview today. There was 30 questions. I didn't speak once about the university course. It was all what I learnt in internships. So like, if I hadn't have got that experience, it's just like, well, I might not have even got to a point of an interview if I didn't have that experience, because that was the only experience listed on my CV, those 3 internships. And although I've had other jobs, like they're really the only ones that count because they're fashion based. So yeah, it is like asking those questions, like Amber said, and just putting in what you want to get out, because that's the fashion industry. You're only, you know, it doesn't take slackers, you know, you've got to do the work and that's it. So yeah, that's about it.
So great info from both of you guys. I'm going to open it up to questions now from the floor. So don't be afraid, guys, to ask anything. So to give you a quick breakdown of how the final year, how the sandwich year works, is that from your second year, if you are on the 4-year program, from your second year, you'll get a weekly bulletin from our careers person, Glesney, who will tell you what internships are available at that time. And basically, everyone at university is there to support you. We have Glesney, plus we have about 4 or 5 other people who are there to kind of support you with things like practice interviews, helping you write your CV and all that kind of stuff. You are away for just over a year, 14 months, and in that 14 months you have to complete about 1,200 hours worth of work placement. So effectively that kind of equates to about 6 months full time, and you can kind of break it up, and as you heard from these guys, break it up in a bunch of different ways. So don't feel too stressed about how that might work. But one of the key things is, while you do get this stuff from the bulletin, you get a lot of help. As you heard from both Natasha and Amber, most of the internships aren't advertised, so there's something that you can't necessarily just apply for. But I can answer any questions from a course perspective, but these guys will answer questions from their perspective. So best things, worst things, ask away. Does anyone have a question? I think, guys, what's happened is that these students have logged into this call and then disappeared to eat pot noodle. This is kind of the right weather for that kind of food. Are there no questions at all from anyone? Thank God. Okay, Tegan, go for it.
Did you consider not doing the sandwich year in like your second year?
So for me, I actually wasn't on the sandwich year course. I actually opted onto it in the second year. Yeah, it was kind of a debate, but I think it was worth it in the end. It is a bit scary going into it. You're like, oh, a year out from uni, but it's so nice to have that year out from uni and then come back and then like catch up. Like I hadn't seen Amber for like a year, and it's just been so amazing to come back to uni and still be so close to each other and have such a tight knit community within the course. So yeah, it was like a debate, but it's definitely worth it.
I was on the 4-year from the start. I just have that kind of mentality, all or nothing. So yeah, no, it was always something I wanted to do, because at the end of the day, you're hired based on your experience. More experience is never a bad thing. And I did have some concerns money-wise leading up to it, because especially traveling abroad, there are visas and all sorts to pay for. Travel, you need to figure out how much it's going to cost to live wherever you're going. So there is a lot to figure out, but I would do it all again in a heartbeat if I was given the choice.
Thanks, guys. I think one thing to think about, and often this is the case with internships, is students think they have to go to London, and you can see from these guys that you don't. It's honestly, it's cheaper to live in India for 6 months than it is to live in London for 6 weeks. So, you know, like, and I would say much more exciting, but that's my own personal opinion. You know, and same with Amsterdam. These kind of amazing European cities that you can go and be in, and not break the bank. But the experience that Natasha's talking about of her experience in London is fairly typical of people's experience of internships in London. And so my kind of personal feeling is that we should make sure that we understand we're in a global industry. So exploring, a travel, adventure, all those things are all part of it. Any more questions at all from anyone? Meg?
Where's like other people in your year gone that actually did that? Other people that did the sandwiches as well?
Good question. Marisha went to London with me.
And was also in Poland at home.
Yes.
Jess went to Australia for all of her internships, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All over Australia, all different places.
Yeah.
We had a couple in Eastern Europe, so Bulgaria, Lithuania, Slovakia, lots local. So a couple in Cardiff, a couple West Wales, and a few dotted around the UK. Does that answer your question, Meg?
How did they was it the same as you then? Did they find that through other people, or did they just look at it themselves? I don't know if that makes sense.
If I'm remembering rightly, the majority of us did find them sort of just talking to people and approaching people ourselves. I assume that some did get them through Glesney's bulletins, which were always full. But like, for example, in my case, my internship was unpaid, which I was content with. But Glesney will only advertise paid placements, and obviously if you can get a paid one, do. Yeah. But for myself, it was a case of I knew I wanted to work with a small company, and realistically, I'm not going to get paid for an internship position at a very small place.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So we as Amber said, we have a policy. So we only advertise paid placements, and this came out about 5 years ago. There was legislation passed that said that any internship that is longer than a month, and we were part of the team that helped write the legislation, should be paid, because then it's not an internship, it's a job, which makes sense. But any type of job that could be completed by somebody at a professional skill level should be paid. But when I started this job, there were people, one student I remember in particular, I went to visit, and if you're in the UK, I might come and visit you. If you're outside of the UK, I will Skype you like this, and we'll talk about what's happening. So you get some support there. I visited this student at the headquarters for, what's that company that I don't like? Urban Outfitters. Urban Outfitters in headquarters in London. She'd been on the placement in central London for a year and not being paid. And as I was leaving the building, there was a protest out the front of the building about unpaid internships from students from local fashion colleges. And I thought, oh yeah, that sucks. And it does. So, you know that we have an ethical approach to our course, and it extends all the way through to internships. But a month or 2 months, or something that offers you a skill that you've never learned, say in Amber's case, learning how to block print and things like that, that's absolutely worth going and doing, provided, of course, you can afford it. So that is important. Anyone else? Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to ask one on the students' behalf, because this is the thing that I see a lot, guys, is Gleasney will advertise paid placements, and then students just want to apply for them. And when I ask, they're like, well, I'm not going to get it anyway. Oh, I wouldn't get it. Someone from a bigger school is going to get it. Someone's from a different school. I'm only like a little kid from the Welsh Valleys. There's no way I'm ever going to get this kind of big cool kid job, and go be a proper fashion designer. Can maybe you talk a bit about some of the other interns from maybe some larger fashion schools that you encountered on your internships, and talk perhaps about your skill and experience level in comparison to theirs?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. So my placement, they did their best to always have give fair opportunities to Indian interns as well as interns from abroad. It was easier for the owner if they were all English speaking. So when I first arrived, there were 2 interns there from Brighton University. They were actually there from a textiles and print design course. So they had much more knowledge about the way the different patterns worked, and they knew a bit more about block printing than I did and print design. But in terms of silhouettes and tech drawings, which is something I did quite a lot of when I started, they had no idea, and it meant that we were communicating a lot. I would make the tech drawing for their product, and then they would put the prints in place, because even though tech drawings don't always have colour, it was vital for a company that dealt with prints all the time. And then moving on from that, there were another 2 interns, both Indian interns, one from a very big Indian school. It's called NITI, I think, which is like the huge one in India. It's sort of like our equivalent would be Central St. Martin's or London College of Fashion or whatever. They were like big leagues and sort of got all the positions in India typically, from what I learned. But they also had another intern from a smaller university. So I think, so there you go. Out of how many of that's 6 of us, only one of us was a big league sort of person, which, but at the end of the day, her being from a bigger school didn't necessarily mean she was better than me. I have memories of her having to be told to get on with the work and do it properly, because she was unfortunately one of the interns that just treated it as, oh, this is a uni project. Maybe that's her university's attitude coming through, or maybe that was just her as a person. But at the end of the day, I had so many compliments from the staff there, and I highly doubt she got the same. I don't mean to be mean, but at the end of the day, I put more work in than she did, and that had absolutely nothing to do with whether I came from a big university or not. It was all about my attitude.
Yeah, I don't think like I was always one who thought, oh, if I don't go to London, I won't get opportunities. And it's just not the case. Like I went to Central St. Martin's, I went to the open day, and I was appalled at how badly they treated like prospective students. Like we got led round by a student and then we were just left there. And we were told we couldn't take our parents into the university to see the university. They had to wait outside for 2 hours. And it's just like what is this kind of like, what are you doing? Like, why are you training this? You know, fashion is a community and you're just like selecting people. And I experienced quite a few people from London College of Fashion at Susie Turner, but I think they were mainly chosen because of where they came from. Susie liked to brag quite a lot about things she'd done, you know, who she has working for her and things. So I think with the bigger name universities, she had more bragging rights, but it's not a placement I'd recommend anyone go anyway. So it's like, it doesn't really matter for that one. The girls I met in Amsterdam, they were doing fashion design and they were from Leeds University, I think. And I still have them as friends on Facebook. And they're doing the same stuff as us. They handed in their dissertation a bit later than I know we did. But yeah, there's not really any comparable, you know, we get taught the same. It's just how it's your work ethic, and that's what counts in industry. It does, like, I think gone are the days where Central St. Martin's was the place you have to be, because, you know, it's like Nottingham Trent's meant to be one of the best universities, or was when I was applying. And that was the same kind of feeling, like you walked into the building and their windows were bricked up. Like, you know, it's just trying to, because you're from Wales and USW is a small university, it doesn't mean you're not going to get anywhere, because you are. And it just, people want you for your work ethic. It comes down to that. Yeah, it's just as simple as that, you know.
Thanks, guys. I mean, I think that's the big thing is, you know, just like everyone's friends who study other stuff don't understand the amount of work that you do as a fashion design student. It's the same kind of thing. It's being a grafter, and it is one of the true areas where meritocracy, you know, based on how you work and what you've done, that still counts. Okay. So we're close-ish to kind of finishing, and I'm just really mindful that I know that there's a few students either in this room or maybe not in this room, but in the first year who were considering of switching from the 4th year to the 3-year program. And I think it's the kind of the first time I've seen that, and I wonder whether that happens because people are a little bit worried about, oh my God, look at this, best partner ever. Okay. Oh, that was delicious chai. So whether or not that happens because of like, I want to get out into the industry faster, or I'm just a bit afraid of that a year out. I think there's a bit of that. Maybe you guys can talk to that a bit about the placements you were on, whether there were many students who were kind of finished their degree, stuff like that. Because is that right? Can you do a show of electronic hands if this is feeling like right? I'm wrong, clearly, by the looks of things. Okay, first years. Does anyone have any more questions for these guys then? Phoebe, you're always good for a chat. Oh, hang on, who was that? Megan, back to you. Okay. Meg, what's your issue?
How do I turn to a 4-year instead of a 3?
I can help you with that. You just fill in a form. It takes 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very simple. What is something? So you guys are on the 4-year program who are in this meeting. Can you do me a show of hands again? Cool. Abby, you're a chatty Cathy. Can you tell me what is one thing that you're afraid of for next year?
I'm sort of afraid of like finding a place. I don't know how to get an internship and who to talk to and stuff.
Okay, so Amber, Natasha, if you give one piece of advice to Abby about finding an internship, what would it be?
Just talk to people and look at companies that you're interested in, regardless of whether or not they're advertising an internship. Ask them, like, and don't be scared to apply either. Just apply for as many as you can. Like, the worst they're gonna do is say no or ignore you. But like, you're not gonna get that placement if you don't apply for it or ask for it.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say email, because like I got Leon from an email. I was also interviewed and offered a placement at Zach Posen in New York via email. You know, I just emailed them and was like,
why did you go to New York?
I can't. Oh, they only
Expensive, the
wanted me
visa's
like
expensive.
1 day a week, and
Oh,
I was
forget it.
like, I'm not
Forget
moving
it.
to New York for that. But also, didn't they like collapse whilst I was in Amsterdam? No.
We don't talk about how, you know, you're talking about before about your company supplying dividends. You know, they've lost that contract at least. So,
Yeah.
you know, and Topshop actually, have they gone under too?
Yeah. But yeah, just email people. It's as simple as that. Yeah, like Amber says, you're either going to get a no or a yes or a no reply. But
Everyone I applied to got back to me, and I was offered an internship.
Okay, that's very, very rare, but that's amazing.
I'm not going to say how many I applied for, because that goes against every piece of advice that everyone gives about this. But
So Amber applied for 2 and got 2.
yeah.
2 yeses. Yeah. Usually the hit rate that we talk about in the final year and in this kind of year is about 10%. So, you know, you apply for 10, you might get a response from one. Lewis, what's the thing that you're most afraid of?
I would say finance-wise, probably. It's the worry that obviously I'm not going to have my student loan, so it's just the harder way of being able to budget and make sure I have the money to be able to live that full amount of time out of uni in those internships.
Okay, so how do you guys do it?
So I am from a very non-rich background. I would definitely be classed as a poor student. Like, my parents cannot financially support me because they're just not in a position to. So I had to do that myself. And as I said, my internship was actually unpaid, but I still managed to finance it. Part of that was because I went to a cheap country. That definitely helped. But also, you do still get a percentage of your student loan. You get
50%.
50%. So you do still get some money, which helps. And you've got the time before.
Oh no, Amber's disappeared into the ether. But what she's saying is that basically, because you have to do 6 months worth of work in 14 months, you've got time. So you can, for example, do a local internship for a couple of months to get a bit of a vibe about maybe where you want to work, then go and work a part-time job for, 8 months, and then go and do the rest of your internship. It's fairly straightforward that way. Natasha, what about you?
Yeah, so I worked a summer job so if we talk about leaving uni, it was about May. We usually finish uni, isn't it? So from May till August, I worked at an embroidery factory. So I saved all that money. I saved all of my student loan and used it in London for rent, because London was unpaid, but the second half of London I got like £500 a month, so that was like paycheck to paycheck. Like, I did not have a penny spare. I also have my student overdraft, which I live in all the time, as Amber can say, I always do. And I was very lucky that my parents did give me a loan for some of the money for Amsterdam, because like Amsterdam is so expensive. I was there for 4 months and it cost me £6,000. So, and I'm in debt by that. I have to pay that back. So that's my next thing, get a job and pay that back first. But yeah, you don't have, you know, if you can find a spare room, or you know, you don't have to always have like your own room, or like I mean like a studio room by that. A lot of people do it by spareroom.com or something, and for London I was definitely looking at those places, but luckily a friend of mine fell pregnant and she was at a London uni, so I switched places with her and she moved back home and I took her place at her flat. So yeah, it is hard to find the money, but yeah, just try and work around it the best you can. You don't always have to go elsewhere, you can do local placements.
But a lot of it is about thinking about your plan. So for example, these guys had a plan, like, okay, we're going to do a bunch of work and save that money, and then I'll do unpaid internships. Someone like Jess, for example, who went to Australia, she has relatives in Brisbane, just outside Brisbane, which is not a fashion centre in any way. It's a bit like having relatives outside, I don't know, Newcastle in England. Like, that's fine. So she went there and she did exactly that as well. So she got herself over to Australia, stayed with her relatives, worked a kind of job just to get acclimatized, did something little with a couple of labels there, and then used that money to move around to the other parts of the country, knowing if she ran out of money, she could just go back to Brisbane. So stuff like that works really well. Things like, just for those students who want paid internships, like, just apply for those. Start applying for those like from the beginning of next year. That's important. Sorry, go Amber.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if they're doing it this year, but I was also lucky enough to get a scholarship from the Welsh Livery Company for £1,000, which was a travel scholarship. So definitely look into that, because I'm almost sure I've seen it advertised again this year. So if they're doing that again, go for it. And literally, I just prepared a rough budget for them of what my flight would cost, what my living costs would be, what I planned to do, why this travel was going to be beneficial to me and my education. And they were just like, okay, here's £1,000, bye.
I mean, there was a few more steps than that, but
okay, yeah, like obviously, like there was an interview process and things like that, but going prepared. They commented on that, about how prepared I was, and they were like, well, we can see you've got an idea of how you're going to spend this money, and that was a help. That essentially paid for my flight.
So when we do stuff like, you know, this is the thing that on first year is a bit of it's a tricky year in a degree, and so when we bang on about things like scheduling and writing lists and making sure it's for that kind of reason. It's so that you show up to someone like ready to roll, and they go, oh, okay. They open their wallets and give you some cash, instead of showing up and they say, what do you need money for? I don't know. Okay, is there anyone scared of something else? Phoebe, you're often terrified of things.
No, I was wondering about what you was talking about earlier. Was there anyone that jumped into the fashion industry without doing any internships? Do you know? That just went straight out there.
I can tell you from a course perspective, it usually, so the kind of inverse happens, right? So student A does a 4-year program. They're likely in the first year out of university to get a graduate position. Now that doesn't mean that they're going to become head designer, but it means like assistant designer, that kind of post. Student B does the 3-year program, and usually the struggle is harder. It's usually 2 or 3 years, and I'll tell you why. Part of it is confidence, and part of it is kind of knowing the ropes a bit. But a lot of companies don't take anyone on who's a graduate, because let's say Natasha goes to Lyon as a graduate. There's nothing stopping her from getting a bunch of ideas in her 2 months there, and then going to their competitors across Amsterdam and getting a job, taking all the information. Whereas if she's a student, she has at least a year's worth of learning to do. So the intellectual property will be a year old or will be expired by the time it gets to a competitor, for example. So there's a lot of companies do that kind of thing. It's absolutely not impossible, and many students have done it. But the likelihood is that it's a slower road. So we'd probably say that a kind of a 4-year degree will probably save you a year or two out in the world. And you still have the structure, and the structure does help. You know, once you're graduating, you're like, bye, see you later. You know, sometimes you don't know what to do, and so you just kind of don't do anything. Does that ring true for you guys?
Yeah, I can't imagine myself having the confidence to approach a company and be like, I can be a designer, if I hadn't gone on the placement year. I just knowing what I was like before my placement, I imagine I'd still be like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Am I shooting above my weight? You know, like, am I trying to do too much? But now I'm like, no, I can do that. So, you know, confidence definitely is one of the main things I gained from working with an actual company.
Yeah, definitely. You can also like just the connections you make from going on internships. You know, I still talk to Leon, I still talk to Tom, who was sometimes working with Leon. But I also met some like crazy people. Like I met William and Kate's photographer in the morning when he was like in Susie's studio because he'd stopped over in the spare bedroom for a night because he has nowhere in London. And it's like, oh, hi, I'm Natasha. Let's connect.
Yeah, continuing from that, I've actually had freelance work as a print designer since my placement. Through the people at my placement, I was just suggested to a random customer of theirs. The owner was like, hey, we had this intern, she was really on it, do you want her to work for you? And from that, I now have experience as a freelance block print designer, and I haven't even graduated yet.
I totally forgot about that, Amber. That was fun.
I almost did as well, to be honest, until Natasha said.
We've had a few things like that, and often what will happen in the kind of year after you come back from internships is I will get an email saying, can we have a chat about consultation? Because the same kind of thing happens is that a lot of people, so Jess as well has had some freelance stuff out of it, and a couple of other students have had a few things like that. I know Selena. You know, Selena, one of the final year students, she worked at a place called Quattro Gymnastics in Swansea, just designing leotards and things like that. Nothing complex really, but they tried to keep her there. They tried to make her not come back to university. They wanted her to work there full time. So like that's a job right there. And so she's got that, you know, potentially in her back pocket for when she graduates. Okay, is there anything else anyone needs to know? Are there any other fears across the first year here?
If something pops into your head after, feel free to message us on Instagram though.
Oh, you're lovely people. Can everyone put their cameras on, and can we do one of those, like a round of applause, please? I think it's important. Let's go. Cameras on. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Keep going. Keep going. Right. Is that everyone? Can everyone see everyone? Great, great, great. All right, you ready? Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, first years. Jochen for coming in. And if you guys, first years want to stay online, Abby's going to do her K-pop podcast now, her live show, all about BTS and Junsun. All right. I'll see you guys later. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.